This has been on my mind recently. The things happening around us that go unnoticed. The work that's unseen. Let me explain. There's an idea that a fish has no idea it's in water, as the water is all it's ever known. And I like to draw parallels to this frequently because I think it's representative of the human condition in so many ways. It has to be. We necessarily block out an infinite number of things in order to focus on what we've decided matters most. In other words, our eyes are spotlights. And the beauty is that this allows us to say yes to that which will push us in a given direction, disregarding everything else. The challenge is that sometimes what's disregarded has value. We can't see the progress we're making as we're building because to build, we have to be focused on the very next brick, on what's in front of us. Step by step, day by day, we see what's next. But what often lives outside that field of vision is what we're becoming. The foundation we're building. That's why the journey can feel frustrating and feel helpless. A lot of the real value kind of floats overhead unnoticed. Now I have infinite examples here. I'll give you one of my favorites. Almost a decade ago, I wanted to make a little acoustic album, singer-songwriter stuff, and I called it Painting the Mississippi, which, if you're ever going to come up with a band name, make it something people can spell, just a side note. Okay, but I was locked in. My heart at the time pulled me in this direction, and I thought of nothing but writing songs. Recording, learning Pro Tools, how to edit and mix music. I thought about promotion, designing album covers, making videos. I'd never done anything like that in my life before. It was all new. And because of that, I'm sure it's no surprise that it was bad. Right? Reality was about to confirm this. I didn't know it yet, but it was coming, right? And I sent it everywhere, all over Boston. It got no traction. I remember just being baffled. My mind went to all those little steps, all the time, all the commitment. I would just sit there thinking, what about all that effort? My eyes were focused entirely like a spotlight on making this happen for months and months and months. And now, what do I have to show for it? Nothing. Maybe even worse than nothing. Embarrassment, a bruised ego, fear of what comes next. If I were a fish, that process was the stream I'd been living in. Not only that, my understanding of life was effort and validation having a one-to-one relationship. Long-term value was something I understood less than Mandarin. It just wasn't something I thought about. But here's what lived outside my field of vision. All that I was becoming. And listen, I know some of these things are said so often that they feel cliche. I get that, right? The classic, well, son, at least you learned. But this, quote-unquote, loss was truly the foundation I would build the next decade on. Here's what younger me learned. Sometimes you work, and you work, and you work, and the results are not there. See, reality is a free market. It'll let you know if you're adding value and if you're not. And what I saw is that sometimes you swing and miss, and it's not personal. In fact, learning to depersonalize these outcomes is what separates the true winners and losers in life, because winning requires taking that data and info and going back to the drawing board. Losing is derived from looking at that result and saying, oh, I must suck then. I must not have what it takes. It was the hardening that I needed. impossible to see that in real time, right? That was life outside the stream I was swimming in. But oh, how grateful I am for it. To ultimately learn that life does not give charity. No one deserves anything. You either evolve until you can get what's yours, or you miss out on all of it. And see, what I'd love you to do as you march forth into your next unknown is understand that so long as you are humble enough to adapt and learn and grow, there is value happening in real time. And I only remind you because it's very likely that right now in this moment you can't see it. You can't see how what you're going through now will make you stronger. How the setbacks will ultimately make all the difference. You can't see how strong you are because all you're looking at is what's next, and you have to. You're not thinking about what you've conquered or how far you've come. No, that somehow eludes us. So don't let the disappointment of the no results now intimidate you. This is the good stuff, the meaningful stuff. If you're willing to learn as you go, I promise you, even when life seems to be at its darkest, you are ascending a staircase that will bring you where you need to be. As the saying goes, sometimes the quote-unquote wrong choices bring us to the right places. Trust in the value you cannot yet see as you make your way through life. Trust that the dots will connect, that this will all make sense. You simply cannot be effective without some trust in the process. The reason life is not a standardized test with, true and false questions is because it's figured out as we go. So don't deprive yourself of that beauty when the reward is delayed, because, my friend, the magic is now. It's in the will to move forward and the courage to keep your head up. It's in what all this becomes. So believe in you. Trust in yourself. Have the patience to walk that path and see it all materialize. A cheat code in life is understanding the significance of getting to 1. Because if you can get 1, you can absolutely get 2. And if you can get 2, you can get 3, 4, 5, 5,000, 500,000, or 5 million. Once you realize that something is possible, you're no longer the same person you once were. Your hands need not be held to the sky as though the universe is going to drop something into them. No, you've cracked the code, you have the info, and the burden has now been placed directly onto your shoulders. That little question, is this possible, dissipates. Getting to 1 was your proof of that. And then the obvious accompanying question, now what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Because the race isn't to 1 million, it's to 1. 1 is the power, 1 is the reassurance, 1 is everything you need. If you can sell 1 painting, you can sell 50,000 paintings. If you can make 1 3-pointer, you can make thousands of 3-pointers. If you can create 1 genius marketing video that goes viral, you can create hundreds, thousands, millions. Again, the evidence, you got 1. Anything beyond 1 is procedural. It's a testing of methods. It's becoming relentless in your pursuit to repeat the process with the pieces at your disposal. But make no mistake, those pieces are there. Everything you need is there, so long as you get to 1. I had to recently break through to this realization. Like so many of us, I'm an ambitious person. I love the game. I want to add value to more people, reach more listeners, generate more revenue, scale impact, all that stuff, of course. But for a while, I just couldn't figure out how. I became almost disillusioned. What am I doing wrong? What if maybe, do I dare even think for a second that I've gone as far as I can go? But was ultimately rescued by the realization that I was asking the world for things I didn't have instead of leveraging what I did. I needed to separate the value I possessed from the logistics that would transport it. Because, and this is what we forget, I've already performed my miracle. I've added value to 1 person, and if you can add value to 1, why not 10? Why not 10 million? It's not a product issue. It's a scaling question. The car works. Figure out how to get it to the racetrack. The tool is effective. Now get it into the hands of the builders. You see the difference, the confidence that comes with that? Instead of doubting all that you bring to the world, asking yourself if more is possible, you say, yeah, of course it is, because I've already done it. Here is my proof. Now, what's around me that I can use to deliver it? How can I try things, reposition things, figure out how to scale and get further? But I know it's possible. So many of us have already gotten to 1. We're adding value. We're doing what we believe in. But we're asking the wrong question. We're still asking whether more is possible. It is. The burden is just on you to bring it to fruition. The burden is on you to find a way to scale the value contained in your 1 thing. And by the way, if you haven't arrived at 1 yet, buckle up. Right? Getting to 1 was one of the best periods of my life. Right? Finding your value proposition, enjoying the process, exploring, finding that intersection of value and personal contentment. You'll eventually arrive there. But remember, for you, the goal is not 1 million, it's 1. 1 idea that works, 1 approach that lights you up, 1 action that opens your eyes to the upside, that makes the world better to those around you. When you've found your 1 thing, when you know it makes a difference, then you move on to the scaling chapter, right? Then how do we turn 1 into 1 million? But they're 2 different questions. So remember that moving forward. No matter how stuck you feel, if you have 1, you simultaneously have a little seed capable of producing infinity. It just needs attention. Trust yourself to work through the logistics, because that's all it is. Transform the if into how and start building that staircase straight to the moon. In 1519, Hernan Cortez arrived on the shores of Mexico with roughly 600 Spaniards, all of whom quickly realized that a mighty empire waited for them not too far inland. And Cortez, inspired by Spain's current golden age and the encompassing sense of ambition and adventure that gave life to the whole journey to the New World, he pushed his men forward into the unknown, ordering them, as Winston Reynolds writes in his Hispania, to destroy the ships behind them. Symbolizing the valiant push forward with no return. Everything would be on the line. And over the years, this act has become folklore, evolved into the famous phrase we all know, burn the boat. Burn the boat. Why is this an important idea? Well, I look at it in very simple terms. Doing anything meaningful is hard. Not planning on it or hoping to do it, but actually doing it. And when you're in the heat of metaphorical battle, right? When you're on your way facing the adversity and the challenges and the hardships, whether it's social, physical, or mental, that growth comes with discomfort. Our instinct is to want out. When we are in pain, our brain's default is, how do I stop the pain? And what I've learned is that if you give yourself off-ramps, you'll take them. If you allow for a plan B, it will become more and more appealing. If the mentality is give it your all until it's inconvenient, well, we all know what happens, right? Since excellence doesn't allow for skipping the inconvenience. When you can't turn around and get back on those boats, you're forced to create outcomes. Because suddenly everything depends on it. Does this mindset come easy? No, I don't believe it does. It took me into my mid-20s to realize, hey, I'd never done anything without a life raft or a safety net. I always carried option B, C, and D around with me in my pocket. And the result was above average at plenty of things, was great at none. But when your back is to the wall, and those demons are closing in, it's incredible what you can do, what you can create. You will shock yourself with your competence and your ability, waiting to be unlocked. Now, I'm not saying keep jamming this square peg in the round hole if you know something's not for you. I'm simply saying if there is something you want, something that you know in your soul is pulling you in, and you really want to see that thing come to fruition, you can't have pre-made off-ramps for yourself when the inevitable difficulty comes in. Because it will. It always does. I refer to those moments as checkpoints, areas of internal deliberation, high security, guarded gates where many arrive, but few get to pass through. Not because they couldn't, but because the cost of access was expensive, too expensive, mentally, physically, and socially expensive, taxing. Most simply say no thanks. They get back on that boat, waiting for them by the shore they arrived on, and return to the world they've always known. The way I see it, this is not about right or wrong. No, that's missing the point entirely. I see the question being, how bad do you want it? A little? A lot? How about enough to go all in? Because if you want to see levels of yourself you never thought possible, you need to kick the ladder down behind you. Force yourself to rise to the occasion amidst the chaos. Map your path straight into the darkness of night. Not because it's the most convenient, but because you gave yourself no other choice. You burned the boats and are content to watch their flames slowly disappear behind you as you go where few have gone. Why is it that when we look back on our lives, it's It's never the easy days or the simplicity. It's not the calm that changes our reality or makes us who we are. Don't get me wrong, calm and simplicity, they're wonderful, but they're not transformative. And why would they be? Why would we change or seek to obtain more without a reason or incentive? It's times of struggle, of turbulence. It's when life was hard that we had to rethink who we are, reshape the way we look at the world. Right? Because without chaos, you don't get calm. Without the storm, you don't get those crazy neon colors and golden rays it leaves as it passes by. In order to triumph in any capacity or any area of life, there's always a sacrifice that must be made. The adversity is the fire that forges the iron. There's a saying, hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. It's a cycle. And this is generally used in a socio-political sense, and I think in a lot of ways it applies today, but where I've really found it useful, where I've found value in it, is at the personal level. Because what I've noticed is that growth also appears to have a cyclical nature. And when we're in a rough situation or overcoming an obstacle, we have to push, we fight, we grow. Sometimes without even realizing it, we achieve a result, and by default, this transformation that in one way or another makes us something new. But then it becomes easy to level out, right? And that's the challenge. It creates this period of stagnation. It's like we made the jump, and it becomes real easy to stay there. And that's why I have found value in when life is not providing resistance to manufacture some. Because that's the only way to grow. Progress is happiness. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, he says purpose is defined from struggle. If things are too calm or simple or quiet, life begins to lack meaning, and that's never a spot we want to be. Life is about the pursuit of something. You just have to figure out what that blank will be. You get to decide which mountain to climb. There's a story about a butterfly making its way out of a cocoon, and it makes a little hole. It starts attempting to push its way out. Someone walks by. They see it struggling and open the cocoon up to help the butterfly out, right? Thinking that they did this great deed. But in doing so, that butterfly has now lost its ability to use its wings to fly. Why? Because the strength that was necessary to fly would have been forged when he fought his way out. The butterfly was deprived of the very thing it needed to become something more, and that's the point. It's easy to get lost in the now and seek to eliminate everything that doesn't make the moment more comfortable, to remove that which doesn't make things easier. But whether we're talking about collectively or the complacency in our individual lives, we have to remember that avoiding discomfort isn't the answer. When your biggest problem is Amazon taking 5 days to deliver, or that your feelings are hurt by someone's comments or opinions on social media, you've lost track of yourself. You may be living in a world lacking the resistance necessary for growth. Maybe it's time to ask what matters. And I remember when I lived in Boston, I'd walk around listening to podcasts downtown, and I'll never forget hearing Ryan Holiday differentiating between passion and purpose. He called passion temporary, a dopamine hit. It's the excitement before the project begins, the beginning of a journey, the honeymoon phase. But passion alone falls short. And it falls short because anything worthwhile is hard. It tests us. It repeatedly presents us with those metaphorical cocoons we have to fight through. We have to earn our stripes, grow our wings, and if we stop at passion, there's no reason to battle on, to take the punches, knowing that they will create for us a tomorrow full of infinite possibility, and that's where we need purpose. That's why it matters. We need something bigger to march towards. a destination that's meaningful. To remind us that those challenging times, they're not a burden. There is no poor me here. They are the fire that sharpens us, that whispers to us not only the importance of carrying on, but the power contained within ourselves to do so. This world, it is not stacked against you. It's never the problem or the obstacle. No, it's the opportunity laid out at your feet. And it's in those very times when we're uncomfortable, when we're unsure, when we don't know where to draw our strength, that we need to remember it comes within. It's an idea that is brought to life through courage, through understanding, through the trials and tribulations of life that didn't intimidate or hold you back, knowing that life has given you everything you need to blaze your trail. So don't be afraid to let it take you somewhere new. If you're lucky enough to be different, don't let go. I spend a lot of my time and energy exploring the power of perspective, how our reality is determined by how we interpret what's in front of us. How one person can look at one thing and see pain or a problem or a barrier, and another person can look at that exact same thing and see opportunity, or a future win, or a bridge to something better. And I think one of the best examples of this is how we perceive those qualities that make us unique. Those things that put us in a different category. Maybe we're a little hesitant to fully embrace because they're not common. And when it comes to that which separates us from everyone else, well, I believe we have a decision to make. I'm going to go back to Robert Frost's fork in the road, right? He says, 2 paths diverged in a wood. I took the one least traveled by, and that made all the difference. On the surface, you could easily brush this off as trivial. It's like, oh, nice, that's cute. He took the path less traveled by. But what does that mean? As it turns out, it means a lot. It means instead of burying what makes him different, he made it his battle cry. Instead of slipping under the radar and sneaking through life like so many of us do, he signed the dotted line for the pain of being a beginner, the struggle of being uncertain, the discipline and sometimes torturous road that is turning a passion into excellence, trading peace of mind for the pursuit of meaning in life. Exploring what makes you unique, it takes courage. And in that message, he chooses courage. Because it's not just that you're alone. Taking that path means every step of the way, your mind screams at you reminders that you're alone. It's not just fighting traffic patterns, it's fighting your DNA. It's resisting that impulse to please sit down, shut up, and blend in. So is it a trivial decision? I'd say not really. Maybe even the most important decision you can make. Because I promise you it's not your commonality with those around you that will bring fulfillment, that will leave a mark on your life and the world that surrounds you. No, it's that thing that's unequivocally you, that's a little out there, that's somewhat strange, that you don't know why, but its gravitational force pulls and pulls and pulls. A tug of war, where one side begs you to just relax, conform, do less, begs you to never be laughed at or criticized, to take the easy road. Then you have the other side, poking, prodding, asking you, hey, yeah, but what if? What if you sacrificed the comfort of right now? What if you explored? What if you took that which you love and you ran with it? What if you worked for a delayed payday? What if for a moment in time, when people ask you what the plan is, you have to look back and say, you know what, I'm not quite sure what I'm building, but I'll keep pivoting until it's so clear you can see it from the moon. Those are the paths that pull us apart. And every time I've lost my way, it's because I've doubted my unique path. And I mean that every time. It's when I become impatient with the journey or look around and see someone else winning in a different arena using different methods, different strategies, see the latest trends and success formulas. Hey man, I want part of that, right? I'm human. I want to win. I want to succeed. But just like a little opening is enough to let in the outside water that sinks the boat, well, a little bit of doubt is enough to derail your process. A process that you have to believe in, protect, nurture. A process that I've come to separate into two pieces. Number one, believing that the exploration of that thing that makes you unique, it's valuable. That your abilities mean something. They're not inconsequential. They're not stupid or trivial or unnecessary. If it means something to you, it will most certainly mean something to others. And you bringing it to life not only helps yourself evolve, grow, flourish, it helps the world. You just have to believe that enough to bring it to life. That's number one. Number two, trusting that as long as you don't stop in pursuit of your unique self, you can't lose. You can't lose. And I don't mean continuing to ram a square peg into a round hole. I mean growing, learning, experimenting, seeing what works. There's a saying that when you hit a dead end, it's not that the goal or the dream should be abandoned. It means the plan needs to be changed or adjusted. And as you get better and more experienced and continually work to adjust your strategy and your plans, learn from your mistakes, it becomes a matter of time. You increase the odds with every step forward. Being different is the most precious thing afforded to you. But to realize that miracle requires a combination of both the mythical and the practical, the imaginary and the real. Dream that dream, visualize that growth, create a world out of those ideas that don't exist yet. But also understand that the conversion process from dream to reality is a practical one. It requires repetition. Learning, losing, adjusting, and people don't like that. It's much easier to blend in than spend years pushing through the agony of setting yourself apart. But it's worth it. And the evidence is so obvious, so plainly pointing to the fact that we only celebrate the outcasts, the crazy ones. We sit around campfires, listen to lectures, watch movies and documentaries about the people that had every reason to doubt themselves but kept moving forward. About the people who could have swept their unique abilities under the rug, but instead used them as their foundation for everything. Not being distracted by what's popular or how anyone else lives or operates. Not seeking to be anyone but themselves, knowing that that is enough. Knowing it's the seed to something precious. The only question is, will you provide the right conditions and nourishment for that little seed to grow? Will you do what so few people have the courage to do? let their authentic selves shine through. Let who they are emerge. Emerson has a quote. He says, "To be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." He goes on to say, "My life should be unique. It should be an alms, a battle, a conquest, a medicine." And see, perpetual happiness is a fool's errand. No, life is full of trials and tribulations and ups and downs. But fulfillment comes from that quest for meaning, for more, for building something, for creating your unique self, a process, a pursuit that must be chiseled from stone. It's never given or provided. It has to be found. Take it. And as Emerson beautifully implies, now is the time. The question is, what are you going to make with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? What will you make of the possibilities that only you know, only you understand, that only you can bring to life? Never doubt yourself, or your gifts, or the things that set you apart. You don't need everyone else to believe in them. You just need to convince yourself. Everything else, it falls right into place. Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change himself. This was written by Leo Tolstoy in reference to people's proclivity to point out at the world and project blame rather than to point in at themselves and ask, why? What can I do? Right? How can I be better? Which, when you think about it, is basically a shark forfeiting its bite. Right, or a bird giving up its wings. Our personal agency is without a doubt our superpower. Yet, from my vantage point, it sometimes feels like we're walking away from that superpower, a tiny step at a time. Little by little, day by day, we're allowing greatness to fade while bringing about the death of the hero. And well, that's a pretty big claim. What could I possibly mean by this? It's funny, when people ask me what I'm most proud of, my mind pretty quickly goes to my work, the brand that I've dedicated the last almost decade to building. But I don't think that's right. I think it's a product of my answer, but it's not my answer. What I'm most proud of is chipping away at the monster that is the victim mentality. My default when things went wrong for so long was to feel bad for myself. It was easier to be the victim and sulk than it was to keep taking the hits. It's like a cheat code. When you can just bask in your sorrow and hate the world, you don't have to do anything. It's like a giant ibuprofen for the discomfort that is life. But it relieves the symptom, not the cause. And to understand, to overcome this worldview is like being gifted with a new pair of eyes. And what I learned was that self-pity, it gets you nothing. It leaves you resentful, disappointed, envious, wandering down a path that is not your own. What I learned was that my story needed a hero. That's why as I grew, I spoke about the power and the beauty of doing the difficult thing. Running in the rain, chasing the metaphorical fireflies, taking the last train home. See, until you immerse yourself into that vast unknown, you stay in a cell of your own making. You build walls of limitation and you exist entirely within them. and as time has progressed. I look back, there are two things worth mentioning. One is that we find life's meaning in the difficult thing. And two, there is a fundamental misunderstanding and even from time to time contempt for what the difficult thing means, for those who speak of the difficult thing as though hard truths are in some way inconsiderate. Like diverging from the comfort of one's feelings implies a lack of empathy. But that's wrong. If you love someone, if you care about someone, if you care about yourself, you say what is true. And what is true is that the shelter and the temporary comfort of victimhood is a high not worth the withdrawal, not worth the suffering. It got me nowhere, it will get you nowhere, and that is a reality that will never cease to be true. We live in a world that's been shaped entirely by those who found the courage to do the difficult thing. Everything around us is a product of the courageous decision to take the now and bend it. And that means taking hits. It means being criticized. It means by definition you are choosing to be uncommon. You're choosing to change things, yourself, and by default the world around you. There's nothing wrong with being common. Quitting is relatable. Failure is relatable. Falling short is relatable. Because we're all human and we've all been there. But these stock features of humanity, they are not worth celebrating. We don't put on pedestals the familiar. No, we put on pedestals the times that we've reshaped the familiar. And a world of participation trophies is a world that has disincentivized that which makes life worth living. It cripples the very pursuit that ignites the soul, a push towards the extraordinary. It's time we resurrect the hero. See through the facade of short-term comfort that leads to long-term emptiness. In a world where attention is currency, it's time we acknowledge the payment we receive when we play victim buys only despair. Sure, we're flawed. That will always be true, but we are capable of manufacturing greatness. We're capable of capturing hearts and captivating minds. If you could only see within yourself that story unwritten. If you could feel the greatness that awaits, the roads to be traveled and mountains to be climbed, there would be no debate. There'd be no hesitation about that march to the belly of the beast. If only to show that our demons exist solely where we allow them to. Resurrect the hero. Fight those battles that light you up. Blaze your trail through the valley of darkness. Take that path unknown to the common man, unseen to those who live within the confines of what is. Resurrect that hero because you need you, because the world needs you. There's no time to be down or sad or dwell on the mistakes of yesterday. There's too much on the line to pretend that settling was the plan all along, or to point at the obstacles with disdain and hatred while life rotates around you. No, resurrect the hero. Resurrect your answer. Resurrect the person you were meant to be. It may not be simple or intuitive. It may cause you to give more than you knew you had. It may not be easy. But my friend, easy never changed the world. woke up this morning to this songbird, singing her sweet melodies like only she knows how. Perched above the street, looking down at the people, the cars, but somehow indifferent to all that below. Like her heart was fully immersed in her song. As I got out of bed, opened the curtains, and let the early morning sun make its way into my room, I reveled in the moment. It was both simple and perfect, two things that often go hand in hand. And as I made my way to the kitchen for that cup of coffee, I had a thought. That little songbird out there, she'll never understand how beautiful she is. She'll never know that she made my morning just a little brighter, or that she helped lift my spirits after a less than ideal yesterday. No, she's just doing her, and in return making a mark on a world that needs what she has to give. So what? Well, maybe there's something we can learn from the songbird as we go about making our way in the world. As far as I'm concerned, there have been two great challenges in my life: finding my song, and then finding the courage to sing it. Or perhaps put another way, discovering who you are and then holding on tight in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else, as Emerson said, is the greatest accomplishment. It will always be a challenge to bring our thoughts to life because, well, people tend to only see what's placed right in front of them. It's just not realistic to place tomorrow at someone's feet, but here's the magic. I don't think that songbird cares about being realistic. See, over time, we've done quite the dance, reality and I. Like a tug of war on where to lean and where to pull. What's worth my time, what's not, when to stay and when to go. It's a gray area that I've had to work through, and I know others have as well, trying something new, taking a risk, sharing their art with the world, going down a path with a high probability of failure. You know, when maybe we think we've found our song and we're singing, but no one seems to hear her. That's when the status quo has never looked so tempting, so ideal. When settling for the easy path has never seemed so appealing. No, never as appealing as when our songs seem to get lost in the ether. We know how hard it is to give a piece of ourselves to the world, and it seems odd not to get something back. But you know, I think this is when you must sing with all your heart and soul. Just like that songbird, indifferent to life below the branches of its tree. Well, so should you be to the factors existing outside the realm of what's best for you. It's not easy to uncover what makes you feel alive, and when you find that, live it. Own it, sing it at the top of your lungs, because it may seem like it's falling on deaf ears. But you just might be someone else's songbird, oblivious, like my feathered friend outside, to the beauty you are creating by just being you. By sharing what means the most to you with the world that, whether you realize it or not, needs to hear your song. So songbird, sing. Yeah, for you, but also for the world. There's a quote that states, Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Which means that your reaction is drastically more important than the circumstance. And that's critical to know. It's critical to understand that no one in life has more power over your own situation than you. And there's an old story that hits on this point exactly. There's a father and a daughter. And basically the daughter's complaining. She's complaining about life, how difficult things are. She doesn't know how she's going to make it in whatever it is she's doing. I mean, the bottom line is she's tired of the day-to-day, right? And her father gets this idea. He says, come with me into the kitchen. And he gets 3 pots of water, puts them on the stove and turns the burners on. As soon as they start boiling, he drops a potato in the first one, an egg in the second one, and some coffee beans in the third one. And after some time goes by and they boil a little bit, he pulls them out, right? He puts the potato in a bowl, he puts the egg in a bowl, and he takes a ladle and he puts some of the coffee in a cup. And he says, what do you see? She says, well, I see a potato, I see eggs, and I see coffee. He says, yeah, but look closer. There's more there. Right? And she goes and she touches the potato and it's now soft. And he hands her the bowl with the boiled egg. Right? She takes the shell off and breaks it open. She sees that it's hard inside. Then finally he asks her to take a sip of the coffee. And, she smells it. She takes a sip. A smile comes to her face. She says, so what does all this mean? What are you trying to say? And he says, well, the potato, when I dropped it in the water, it was rigid, it was tough, it was uncompromising. But in the boiling water, it became soft, weak. Then you have the egg that was basically the opposite. This delicate layer protecting a liquid center, and the boiling water made it hard. And then there was the coffee. That wasn't just changed by the situation. It created something new. It took the same adversity and used it as a lever to bring something beautiful into existence. He then looks at his daughter and says, look, when things become challenging, when things become difficult, which one are you? What's your approach? See, maybe the question is not about how challenging the situation is, right? Maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe it's, how do you transform yourself and by default, the world around you? How do you take your strengths, your values, your loves, your joys, your happiness, and let that lead you into something bigger? When life gets hard, and it does, what do you become? I always remind myself, we are not defined by life at peak state. As much as I wish that were the case, right? We're not shaped by the easy days or the times that we floated by. Because those times are great, they're enjoyable, but they're not what make or break us. It's the times that challenge us and ask us to be what we have not yet become. That's the good stuff. And this is another one of those, simple but not easy type things, because on paper it makes sense, it's understood. But it's an outlook that manifests over time. It's slowly stacked piece by piece and brick by brick, realizing that every situation provides you with tools to make something out of an apparent nothing. And then it waits, right? Because fate is in your hands. And I can certainly think of, times in my life, that's one of the reasons I love these stories. I can reflect where each one of those pots of boiling water was relevant, right? I can think of times I was too headstrong, like the metaphorical potato. I thought success would be easy. I thought projects would be simple to execute. I spent months doing things that just weren't good because I didn't ask, what does the world need? I asked myself, what do I want to give the world? and there has to be a marriage there, right? And it was a quick reminder that the world owes me nothing. I was humbled or softened, as the story goes. I've been the egg, I've been timid, I've been uncertain, thin-skinned, worrying about what people would say or the content I was creating, worried about perception. How would things look if I failed? And very quickly, I learned that when life is a game of comparison or one-upmanship, when you do things for reasons and people other than yourself, can't win. You overcompensate. You do things for the wrong reasons and you lose yourself. You become hardened. And then there's the good stuff, right? Getting to the coffee, not bowing down to the circumstances, but shaping them. Not letting life dictate how the story goes or the fate of your character. And what's interesting is I'm pretty sure that being that metaphorical egg and the potato, they lay the foundation to become the coffee, the life lessons, the falling down, the picking my ego up off the floor, learning to trust myself, not be led by the opinions and expectations of others. You essentially learn that you can take the world around you and change it, that it is malleable, it is flexible. You have that power. You have that ability. It's up to you to believe it. And that's critical because no one comes along and co-signs that understanding for you. It's an internal process. You start to learn that things aren't there to provide instruction. They're there to propel you. But can you see the unknown as the opportunity, the obstacle as the way, and the loss as the armor that you pick up during the journey? And so, all of these words essentially come to one point. And that point is you have so much more control over your life than you think you do. As I've said before, you are stronger than you think you are. You are more resilient than you can even imagine. And when life tests you, and again, it will, remember that the challenges are not happening to you, but for you. The world isn't taking away what you have, it's giving you what you need. So long as you're willing to adapt with it, to grow, expand out, because you not only have the ability to change yourself, but the world as well.